Everybody, I'm Stacey with Stacey's Organizing and Decorating for Life. I'm here to help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives. This is my baby Grinch. He's oftentimes the director and narrator of these videos, he thinks anyway. So today our topic is going to be on what if I am the problem? You know, oftentimes we think that the people outside of us are the problem. But what if I am the problem? I used to have a sticker hanging on my mirror that said, "You are looking at the problem." And there's my face, right? And then oftentimes when we think that the people outside of us have the problem or are the problem, we're trying to save them. But what if the person that we need to save is ourselves? So if you or anyone you know has asked yourself these questions, or you've heard them ask themselves those questions, then please feel free to like and subscribe and share if you think it will help somebody else. Before we get started though, I want to remind you that I'm not a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, any of those things. I'm not a scientist either, but I like those things. And I may share some of those things sometimes, but what I am is a life coach. And I have a webpage called staceyforlife.com. On this webpage, I write a monthly blog, and I invite you to check that out, as well as there's a description of the services that I provide as a life coach dealing with addiction, codependency, and grief, but not exclusively to those things. Because underneath those things lies a desire for healing and healthy relationships, as well as development of spiritual and soul consciousness. Really, it's about going within and feeling comfortable in your own skin. So if you or anyone you know need help in any of those areas, please feel free to check it out. Once again, staceyforlife.com, or you can reach me at staceyreinick@gmail.com. I'm on most social media as Stacey Renee. It's Stacey Renee 8 on Instagram, and of course it's Stacey's Organizing and Decorating for Life as well on Facebook. So let's get started. You know, oftentimes we're looking at other people and thinking they're the problem. I myself did, you know, when I began my journey with addiction. I first went into the fellowship of addiction, one of the fellowships of addiction, I'm not even going to say which, you know, in 1990. And then I was like, oh, whoa, this is too heavy for me. I just want to smoke some weed and drink some beer, you know. So I hadn't been to prison, and I hadn't, you know, lost my kids, and I hadn't stuck needle in my arm. So I thought, oh, no. So I had an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards people in that way. And I thought, oh, I'm not that bad. It was easy for me to rationalize and justify that I was not like those people. So, you know, it took me till 97 because addiction is continuing and progressive if you are in addiction. Now, I'm not saying, because not everybody that I deal with is an addict. So we're going to kind of describe the difference between that, because when I'm working with people and we're trying to figure out if they are addicted, you know, or not addicted, oftentimes we're talking about distractions and avoidance. Now, the difference is when a distraction is just something that you go off to, you know, it's minimalized if you try to say that it's something that you do all day. A distraction is not something, you know, that will cause you self-sabotaging behavior. It's not going to cause you to lose something. If you get distracted, then you're just distracted usually for a moment, and then you return. So a distraction is something that you're distracted and return. But if you don't return to your task, whatever that may be, then it may possibly be self-sabotaging and an addiction. You know, and so a lot of people will excuse themselves, calling this a distraction, that a distraction, or it could be, you know, they're avoiding feeling their feelings, is oftentimes why people don't want to deal with addiction, because the core underneath, I believe, most addiction, and I don't know, I'm not, like I said, a doctor and psychologist, but I know for myself, it's that feeling of not feeling good enough, or that we're insecure underneath down to the core. And that, you know, there's definitely a lot of fears underneath there as well. So instead of looking at those fears, people may say that they want to distract themselves, or they may do the action of distracting themselves. In addiction, what happens is what we do to feel good eventually is our demise and causes our self-sabotage. This is why I love the polarities so much too, is because if, you know, it can bring us so much happiness, but it can also bring us so much pain. So it's, you know, best to look for the place of harmony. And so if it's just a distraction, you're going to come back to whatever your task is. But if it's an addiction, what we do is we end up on this vicious cycle because we don't want to feel our feelings. Oftentimes you may think of addiction as I just described, as how I went into a place and they, were going to prison and things like this, that a lot of people want to, minimalize themselves and their own problems, thinking that it's grandiose like that, like I did. But the thing is that the addictions manifest in a variety of ways. Even sometimes when we work on one addiction, say substance abuse, our addiction may come up in gambling, sex, or another area, because some of us just have addictive personalities. Now, whether you want to say it's a disease or a disorder is up to you. I don't, like I say, I'm not going to split hairs about those kind of things. However, if it's causing us to have pain and to not have joy in our lives, then it's something that needs to be looked at. If it's an insane behavior, and insanity, as we know, is repeating the same behaviors over and over again. So these feelings that are underneath addiction, I don't know exactly what they all are, but I would think that, if we have a food addiction, we're searching for comfort, right? Because they say comfort food. And if we're dealing with gambling issues, then maybe it's power. Even sex could be power too, but really sex is, insecurity as well, is what are we trying to prove? So it's always, like, what are we trying to prove? We have the functioning and non-functioning addicts. A lot of people don't believe that they're addicted to anything because they can still function. They're still going to work. They still think that they're a part of their family. But underneath it all, we all realize that there's a problem, right? I mean, we know that there's a problem. Oftentimes we want to feel victimized, but we really don't want to feel victimized, do we? Because when we share how we feel victimized, it may give us a relief for a moment, and even those things can be addicting. The drama, chaos, and victimization, even those can be addicting. But what we find is, just like with all the other addictions, is after we've done it, we don't feel better on the inside. We don't feel like we're living from the inside out, really. We don't feel like we're living authentically. We don't feel like we're living whole. You see, because in addiction, what we often say is there's a hole in our soul. But once we work on that healing, we can have a whole soul, where we're not feeling like we're missing anything. But it takes that healing. So why don't people ask for help? Why don't they? And I've asked myself this question, and I have to remember myself, most of the time it's embarrassment, I think, because we have this exterior that we've all tried to have people, and some people say that it's a mask, but this exterior that we've tried to portray, that everything's fine, that we grew up in these shadow things. Maybe we weren't validated, like I said in last week's video, so we don't know that we can tell when something's not fine. We have to learn a different language, and we can't learn it by ourselves. So why don't we ask for help? I read something today on LinkedIn, and I thought that this was a great description of why we don't ask for help. It says some people aren't good at asking for help because they're so used to being the helper. Throughout their life, they've experienced an unbalanced give and take. So their instinct is usually, I'll figure it out on my own. Self-reliance is all they've ever known. So that's sad when people are going through this too, because I want you to think about something. Is oftentimes people don't want to accept help because they think they're going to owe somebody something, that somebody's going to have an expectation that they're going to owe somebody something. I want you to hear me out. That's a projection. Because the thing is when we're in this and we're trying to save people, we are trying to receive something ourselves. So if you're the one always trying to save, if we look underneath, when we look at ourselves, what is it that we're trying to receive out of saving? See, we're trying to heal somebody else, once again, like I talked last week, by not healing ourselves. So there's never going to be enough appreciation for what we do if that's why we're doing it, if that's the intention. See, you hear like the power of intention so many times, but maybe you don't understand what that means. That's what that means. We can't have a fear of owing somebody else by giving or by receiving if we don't have that within ourselves, that somebody's going to owe us something by giving. So we don't think that we're doing it that way. It's a subconscious act. So I'm not saying that, people are setting up doing that, although some people might be unconsciously subconscious doing that, But most of the time we think we're giving because it makes us feel better to give somebody. But then when they don't reciprocate something, or when it feels like we're unappreciative, if it feels like that they're expecting, then we get a tiff, because we're not giving from our genuine, in it, or we're not being genuine in our giving, but we don't know we're not being genuine because maybe it was a learned behavior to do that. Maybe, because churches and parents and everything else, they were taught this way. This is old tape, so that's why it's a we program, because people have to, or we issue, and that order of reaching out, and why don't we reach out? And being able to be self-reflective. I also made a post on my topic Tuesday, and it was Pima Chodron, and it said, hold on, I'll get it. It said, the most fundamental harm we can do to ourselves is to remain ignorant by not having the courage to look at ourselves honestly and gently. Again, that was Pima Chodron. So when I say that, am I the problem? It's not saying, you are the problem, and beating ourselves up. That's not gentle. So it's looking at ourselves honestly and gently. And I know for me, that's what I help people do as a life coach, and that was what was done for me when I had a life coach. So I think that that's invaluable, is to be able to have somebody who's been able to be gentle with themselves so they can be gentle with you as you're learning these things. Because we reteach ourselves. If this was a learned behavior, this negative self-talk, because that's what I work with a lot of people on, is their self-talk. Because we're breaking a pattern, we're breaking a cycle of this self-talk that keeps repeating. And if we're saying it to somebody else, there's verbal abuse is a real thing. Many people have been verbally abused, and maybe they unconsciously verbal abuse other people because they're probably doing it less than it was done to them. But nevertheless, it's still verbal abuse, And so they're not understanding why people don't want to be around them when they're verbally abusive. They may be very generous and sweet people, but if they're verbally abusive, eventually at some point, people are not even going to want to receive their help. A lot of times they are the most generous and they're giving, but they haven't healed that within themselves. So at the same time, when they're hating their self, they're going to hate somebody else. You see, nothing anybody else can appreciate or give to you on the outside, if you haven't done some healing work, is ever going to be enough. So, I just wanted to reiterate that we all know if there's something going on deep down in our soul, or burying our soul from our highest and best good. If there's something that, why we're feeling like a victim, we know that we don't like feeling like a victim. So why don't we find our person? I have people that, whether I sponsor them or whether I coach them, they call me their person, because it's somebody that you can go to, that you can feel comfortable stripping off those layers and those thoughts and those shames and those guilts and everything else, so that you can be reprogrammed. You can reprogram yourself and be empowered. But sometimes we need somebody else to teach us a different kind of language so that we can have a different inner dialogue than what we're having. It's not to look at ourselves in that mirror and say, you are the effing problem, and you are, in all of this. Because that's hate, and that's not being gentle with yourself. So the gentle part is, oftentimes we are harder on ourselves than we are on other people. So the gentle part is finding your person, whether it be clergy, whether it be a life coach, whether it be a psychologist, whoever you need to reach out to, because you are worth it. Because you have value. A lot of times people don't feel value, is why they don't speak up and they don't express themselves genuinely, or when they do speak up, maybe it's coming out sideways, that verbally abusive. See, we can't control people by being verbally abusive, and then, it's harmful when we have to sit with ourselves and we don't know what to do. There is an answer, there is healing, there is the ability to ask for help. That's one of the things in the 12-step programs, is that people are just in shock and awe. That's how we learned. That's how I learned not to expect that somebody else is going to expect something from me if they help me. because people gave freely to me in those programs. I had beautiful sponsors who were able to help me and guide me, and they never wanted anything in return except for me to be able to stay clean and help others do that same thing. So that I hope that this video has been helpful to you so that you can see that you are valuable. When I work with people, oftentimes it's changing that inner dialogue to where they look in that mirror and they may think that they're worthless, and I can remind them that they're priceless and that they're valuable. Because if you have this life force still going within you, then if you can see one thing, you can see the other, because life is built on polarities. You do not have to appear to be perfect. It's oftentimes that people love us for those little quirks and those little things that we have, or being able to even laugh at ourselves and our own, mistakes and everything else. But how do we learn to laugh at ourselves at our own mistakes if we're trying to be perfect all the time? And in your soul of souls, if you're feeling addicted to video games, to drama, to chaos of any sort, to if you're being addicted to food, if you're being addicted to drugs, if you're being addicted to whatever else, sex, if you're being addicted to complaining, you can even be addicted to complaining. There's all kinds of ways. You could look up addiction and see what all of them are. You don't need me to tell you all of that. If you suspect, if your soul is unhappy, then I just encourage you to find a person that you feel comfortable with and asking for help. Because you won't change your inner dialogue on your own. You can't. You can't teach yourself the same, it's the saying that we can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it, so you can't. That's why it's a we thing. And I'm not saying that you need a 12-step program. Not all people do. That's where the psychologists and life coaches come in. I work with people who do not work in a 12-step program. It's just really about accepting our humanness and developing our spirit. And realizing that when you develop your spirit, you realize that there's a bigger, broader picture going on. So you look at your life instances and you learn to have compassion and mercy for your life instances and see that created your path to your greatness. And in your humanness, you get to learn to laugh with and at yourself, and this envelops you to laugh with and at others who feel comfortable with that. You find your tribe. The other night we did a ritual, and I do believe that when we heal ourselves, we heal the past and we heal the future by healing ourselves in the present, and we did our little ceremony, and everything. And I believe there was this feeling of energy there that it was the grandmothers, so to speak, if you look at the Native American, tribal things, is that our grandmothers, our ancestors were like, now you're getting it, because we have distracted ourselves, with other things. The TV can be an addiction, but people will say it's a distraction, and I do it too. When I'm eating dinner, I want to be mindless. I'm not trying to think of things. When I'm eating lunch, I might have my face in a book. Could you call it a distraction? Yeah, but I'm getting, I am getting, those things are good as long as they're just a distraction and not an addiction, as long as they're for entertainment or for education, So it's being able to gauge and really be honest with ourselves, like Pema Chodron said, is that getting honest with ourselves, and realizing that the problem is not outside of ourselves. And the problems that the person we need to save is ourself. And that we can be gentle with ourselves when we save ourselves, but it's a we thing. We can be gentle with ourselves, because you alone probably will not solve your own problems, because you would if you could, and if you haven't already, then you can't. Okay? So I hope that this video has been helpful. I don't know how popular solving our problems on our own is going to be, or getting help solving our problems, not really solving them on our own, but getting help. But it does start with us making the decision that somebody else outside of us can't solve our problems for us. So if you're feeling like you're in hell, that's where they say that, the spirituality comes from, is that we've already been to hell. And so you can develop your spirit, but it's going to take work, but it's less work than staying in hell, honestly. So I hope you'll reach out and ask somebody for help and not try to be self-reliant. To understand that not everybody wants something from you, and that when you develop, a different dialogue, because maybe you were told that. I know I was told that on dates. I paid for half my dates for a long time because I thought that, if I didn't pay for half my dates, the voice in my head was that they would expect me to put out. And, when you love yourself, you allow somebody to take you out, you allow somebody to enjoy your company and to pay for the date and to say no if they want more than that and just not go out with them again. This is the healthy way. So oftentimes people are asking me about dates, and I've thought about dating as another video. So if you like that, then please put comments in below or message me or something, because I have people, hit me up constantly about relationships and dating on the different social medias. And, I kind of say the same thing over and over, but whether or not I need to research it more, delve more into it, because I'm not an expert on it, but I do talk about it, and I do try to give people guidance and direction on what is compatible for them, because oftentimes people aren't even thinking about compatibility and looking for a partner, and that's very important. It's just important to find somebody compatible and not just attractive, and not just to say I want this and say this is what they do. They tell me, well, I'm very transparent, and it's like, well, did you ask them about them? Because people are always willing to talk about themselves, but are you listening to somebody else? How are you going to know if they're compatible? So it's a weird time, understandably. So I'm willing to explore that with you all if you'd like to hear about that. Because relationships, we want healing and healthy relationships, and I do work with that. So I hope that this video has been helpful to you. I hope it will be helpful to somebody else. I hope that you realize that the most valuable relationship you have is that one with yourself, and to love yourself. And oftentimes we are told the word love, and we intellectualize a lot of things, but do we feel those things? Do you have a hole in your soul? You know if you have a hole in your soul or not. So please feel free to reach out to me. I always tell y'all that I can give you 30 minutes of my time. Can I fix you in 30 minutes? Oh, hell no. I cannot help you in 30 minutes with that. But I can maybe help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives just for the moment, so that you can get a clear idea on what you need to do, who you need to seek, and what you need to go after. I'm not to vent at. You don't reach out to me just to vent. But if you really clearly want help with your problem, I want to know what you want to do about your problem and how I can help. So again, I hope that this video has been helpful, and I look forward to connecting with you again next week. Thank you so much for your patience with Grinch and his directing. And I wish you much peace and love until next week. And thank you so much for allowing me this time with you. That's very valuable to me. Remember, your time is valuable. So thank you very much, and have a great week, rest of your weekend. See you next week. Bye.